There's a quiet town nestled in the heart of New Mexico, where travelers frequently stop to rest before continuing on long, desolate roads. And just off the interstate stands the Drury Inn in Las Cruces, a hotel known more for its convenience than comfort. But those who've stayed in room 214 know there's something far more unsettling behind its ordinary doors. It was November 2013 when Dennis Tillman, a traveling salesman from Colorado, checked in for what he assumed would be a single, uneventful night. He'd driven 6 hours, exhausted and eager to catch up on sleep before heading into El Paso for business. At the front desk, the clerk hesitated before assigning his room, whispering something under her breath as she handed him the key card. That night, Dennis lay down, turned off the lights, and closed his eyes, but he never found rest. He woke around 2:43 a.m. to the sensation of someone sitting at the edge of the bed. He reached out, assuming maybe he left something there or rolled onto a lump in the mattress, but he felt the indent, the weight. He switched on the bedside lamp and found nothing. But the impression was still there, deep, human-sized. He tried to shake it off as exhaustion or sleep paralysis, but it didn't end there. Over the next hour, he heard footsteps pacing between the window and the bathroom. Slow, measured, unhurried. He stood up, looked around, even checked the hallway, but again, nothing. Just a heavy silence that seemed to vibrate in his skull. By morning, Dennis had barely slept. He went downstairs, pale and visibly shaken. When the morning receptionist asked how his stay was, he simply muttered, "That room has someone else in it." She didn't ask questions. She just nodded. Later, Dennis looked up the hotel and learned that room 214 was once the scene of a murder-suicide in 1991. A man named Paul Chambers had killed his wife and then himself during a heated dispute while on a road trip. Guests over the years have reported the same experiences: footsteps, voices, even the sound of a woman sobbing through the walls. Dennis never stayed at another Drury Inn again. And to this day, room 214 remains one of the least booked rooms in the hotel, often skipped over entirely, unless the hotel is completely full. In the hills outside Louisville stands a building so steeped in death that even its empty halls seem to breathe. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, a now defunct tuberculosis hospital, saw the deaths of over 63,000 people throughout its operation. Today, it's a hotspot for paranormal investigators and thrill seekers. But few who visit ever forget what they saw there. In October 2019, Morgan Hartley, a YouTube documentarian from Ohio, visited Waverly Hills for an overnight shoot. She had a small crew, 2 camera operators, 1 sound tech, and her co-host, Chris. They had permission to roam freely from midnight until dawn, and their goal was to capture genuine supernatural activity. Around 3:17 a.m., while exploring the 5th floor, the area believed to be the most haunted, they set up cameras near room 502. That room has its own grim reputation. A nurse allegedly hanged herself there in 1928, and another jumped to her death from the window. As the crew sat in silence, monitoring the hallway through night vision, they heard its heels tapping lightly down the corridor. Chris stepped out first, whispering, "Is someone there?" No reply. But the footsteps continued, then stopped. A second later, Morgan screamed. A tall, dark silhouette had appeared just behind Chris, tall, gaunt, and featureless. The figure stood perfectly still, but Morgan said later it vibrated slightly, like the static on an old TV. When Chris turned around, it vanished. They reviewed the footage later and found a brief, flickering figure in the hallway. It wasn't conclusive, but it wasn't nothing either. The crew cut the shoot short and left before sunrise, In the weeks that followed, each member reported strange happenings back home. Lights turning on by themselves, waking up to shadowy figures at the foot of their beds, and in Morgan's case, bruises in the shape of fingers on her arms. To this day, she refuses to talk about what else happened that night. But her final words in the documentary say it all. "We thought we were just filming ghosts. We didn't realize something might follow us home." In the heart of Old Town, San Diego, sits a quaint, two-story home made of red brick and white shutters. To passers-by, it might look like a charming relic from the past, but inside the Whaley house lies something deeply wrong. Declared by the U.S. Commerce Department as America's most haunted house, this historic building holds more than just antique furniture. In 1852, the land the house was built on served as a gallows for executions. One of the most infamous was that of Yankee Jim Robinson, a convicted thief who died kicking and gasping from a miscalculated hanging. Years later, Thomas Whaley built his family home on the very spot where Yankee Jim had been executed, despite knowing its grim history. Visitors and historians alike believe Jim never left. In 2015, a tourist named Rebecca Lowe and her teenage son, Dylan, visited the Whaley house during a guided night tour. While exploring the parlor, Dylan suddenly collapsed, no warning, no prior health issues. He was unconscious for nearly 2 minutes. When he awoke, he told his mother he'd felt someone choke him, like an ice-cold rope around his neck. The tour guide paled and quietly told them about the exact spot where Yankee Jim had been hanged, right above where Dylan had fallen. Rebecca returned home to New Jersey with more than just photographs. Over the next few months, Dylan suffered vivid nightmares, always the same. A tall man with sunken eyes and a crooked neck standing at the foot of his bed, saying nothing, just watching. Rebecca reached out to a local priest who agreed to bless the house. But during the blessing, the family dog howled nonstop and refused to enter Dylan's room for days afterward. Even now, years later, Dylan refuses to speak about what he saw. But the fear in his eyes says enough.